we could define intellect as that faculty by which we discern reality. Okay? The intellect is our ability to come to know things that are true. So to make a very basic definition of intellect. Our ability to discern reality, to find the things that are true, to see clearly. And in between those two, we have the imagination. That was a good way to map this. So you notice the imagination is not something that's separated from these two. It's a bridge between these two. The imagination informs the intellect. Right? So some of the big philosophical battles that have been waged ever since the 16th century have sought to exclude the imagination from perceiving reality, right? So what we get, and we talked a little bit about this last month for those of you that were at Dissension, but we've got people who think that reality is found only in the intellect, okay, in this subjective approach to knowing things. The Enlightenment thinkers, particularly some of the famous humanists, would say that reality is based on our ability to know things, to come to determine truth for ourselves. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we've got people who say that reality is dictated only by our senses. Empiricists, for example, right? We do scientific experimentation, and reality is something that's totally external from us, but it's also totally located in the observable world. Okay? Only in the senses. We have to sense it. If we can't sense it by our sight, taste, and touch, and we can't reproduce it through experimentation, it's not real, right? So we get both of these extremes. The imagination bridges this. The imagination, for example, helps us to take individual facts, and it serves as a matrix that we can come to know true things. A good example, G.K. Chesterton once said that the imagination is what helps us understand history. Chesterton talked about the historical imagination that we lack. And so he says those who lack an imagination in the study of history, for example, will get a distorted view of reality based on individual cases of things that they've sensed. He uses this particularly in regards to church history. So Chesterton will say, well, if you don't have an imagination, if you don't have a matrix by which to interpret individual events and map them into an understanding of reality, then you'll find individual cases of abuses in the church, for example, and you'll say, well, the church must be false because it's made mistakes in the past. He describes the imagination as what helps you fit together all of this data into a big picture that's true, right? So the imagination does that in various ways. Last night, we talked about the larger subject of beauty, okay, just a little bit. And we talked about how beauty is an example of this primal revelation from God of how He communicates His truth to us, okay, through this transcendental beauty. Plato identified 5 of them, but they all kind of come together in various ways. Beauty being the one that's perhaps most motivating to the human faculties because it engages our emotions and our intellect and all these things. So God speaks to us through beauty. Last night, I contended that we have this aversion to beauty sometimes. We fear it. We fear beauty when we want to be distant from God, and as entire communities, we fear beauty when we think that beauty is going to turn people on to something larger than themselves, right? And we'll see this as we go forward. A couple of examples from Lewis and Tolkien. That they use that in their stories. That beauty is this thing that draws people out of their particular circumstances and tunes them into the big picture that God wants for them.